And welcome back, people, to another installment of Highly Unoffended. Mi gente, here with your boy today, Jimmy. Happy New Year. We haven't checked in yet this year because we've been laying back a little bit. Like always, we're going to give you the truth, nothing but. Why? Because you ain't ready for it. Today, we got a special guest today. We actually got a return guest. We got our boy Uncle Tom in the house. Always welcome.
Thank you, brother.
He's been known to come by and steal a Miller High Life pony from us. He knows where the fridge is now, and he knows how to help himself. And but today we got an author. Today we got a book here. I'll post it up on the gram later. It's called Down the Rabbit Hole: How the Culture of Corrections Engages Crime. The author is Michael Liebowitz. He is from here, local from Connecticut, and he did 25 years incarcerated. He's been out for 2 months.
A little bit more than 2 months.
Little over 2 months.
2.5.
And it's just so crazy because right now, before we went live, I tell everybody to kill their phones, and he didn't know what to do. So that just kind of shows you how adjustments come from little things to big things. So we're going to talk about Down the Rabbit Hole here with Mr. Liebowitz here today. And like I said, welcome back to Highly Unoffended. Michael, I want to welcome you to the show. This is an upfront show. You don't got to hold back. You could just talk. Like I said, this ain't a daycare here. So don't worry about it. I know you already have done some other shows out there. This ain't the one. So you know what I mean. You got something to say? Say it.
Thanks for having me on.
All right. So without further ado, Mike, how you doing today?
I'm doing well. I was a little nervous coming here. I'm kind of behind enemy lines. I'm sitting next to a former cop, and I'm sitting next to a former corrections worker and a former cop. So this place is kind of like a bunker. So I was a little nervous coming in.
Man, that would require a little over 2.5 months.
A little over November 28th, I was released. Yeah.
Holy shit! What was the first thing you did when you got out, brother?
First thing I did when I got out was I went and got a candy bar and a Coke.
You must have been geeked out from the sugar. You must have been all geeked out.
I didn't even really care about the candy bar and the Coke. I just wanted to go into a store. I hadn't been in a store in so long. I just wanted to go into a store and interact with human beings that were not, in prison, everything is kind of like, when you're dealing with the staff, it's like it's not an equal relationship. With inmates, there's always games going on and scams and whatnot, and nobody's really up front. So I just wanted to interact with people that I knew there was no agenda.
What do you think about them skinny jeans these guys are wearing nowadays? You down with those? You buy any? Did you buy any yet?
I haven't bought any jeans, actually. Luckily, my friend's about my size, the friend I live with, so I'm just wearing his. And I don't think they're skinny jeans. I hope that's not my jam.
Like I said, you don't want a false advertisement. Man, I think you coming by with our brother here, Uncle Tom. Like I said, Uncle Tom's former guest. He's always welcome here. He stops by once in a while. Doesn't even hop on and grab a mic. He just sits on the couch, grabs a beer, chills out. But he's welcome here like that. He's fam. But yeah, when Uncle Tom told me he wanted to bring you by and do a little talking about your life as in the last 25 calendars. And so what year did you go in?
1997.
97. How many years do you have on the job, Tom?
Just over 20.
I had 2. Damn, Tom.
Tom, I stayed in it. I stayed in it, but I knew Michael. He lived in the town that I was a police officer. Wow. In Wethersfield. So a brief summary. I'll get into the book, but I think more importantly is our relationship. Michael and I relationship was. I knew Michael when he was a kid. I arrested both his parents. His parents had some issues with drugs and alcohol. Michael was a kid that everybody gravitated to, but and most of the cops that knew Michael knew that he could be something, but he didn't have a shot in hell at the time because of what you have. Looked into it. I wasn't no longer a cop when he finally went to jail, right?
I think you were still.
Yeah, still right. But when it continued, I had retired in 2004, so it wasn't long into your stint. And I want to say it was probably a couple of years ago. I got a phone call from another real estate agent that I was friends with, and she said, "Hey, there's a guy on the radio station, AM station, that's talking about you. They're talking about Kevin Dillon and Jim Citrano, chief of Wethersfield." I said, what's his name? He said, Michael Liebowitz. And the first thing I said, oh, what a good kid. Now,
your name kind of sounds like a congressman. I hear
Yeah.
that name.
Yeah.
I know that guy. Yeah, we golf together.
So when I say a good kid, that's what I remember him as a child, as a good kid. And he did get in trouble. He stayed friends with some of his childhood friends, the guy he moved in with. That I stayed in touch with him. And he talked about the good, bad police officers back in the day. And he thought I was a good one. So I reached out. I wound up getting his book. I read 90% of the book a couple times so far. And it's a well-written book. Michael got sentenced to more than 25 years.
I got sentenced to 33 years, total effective sentence.
And the problem I had with this is I knew some of the people that he was hanging with back then that actually did more of the crime. And they got not even an eighth of the sentence that did the actual crime itself. Michael wasn't even close to the place of the crime. So when I did the research, I went and pulled reports, internet, court cases, and read about it before I could get behind Michael. I thought you got screwed. And I know some of the people out there, I took a lot of shit being a cop and sticking up for, what are you sticking up for a criminal for? Well, he did his time. He's no longer a criminal in my, and now we could talk about recidivism.
When does it want? When does it end? When do
Right.
you not wear the scarlet letter anymore?
Right. And that's what he joked. He said, well, it's a cop and a crook. I said, you're only a crook if you decide to be a crook. And he's doing a lot of good things. He went to, got 2 degrees in, by the way, it's in the transcript. And I did go testify for Michael, not being well liked in police work, but I did it because I felt it was the right thing to do. And the judge, when you got sentenced, said, I'm going to lock him away because he's just useless to society, pretty much to those words. And you're going to prove it to everybody because you're going to be a piece of shit. You're never going to do anything in jail, and you're going to probably die in jail. Well, Michael turned it around. He's the 1%er. He got 2 degrees. He stayed active, stayed out of trouble, became an advocate, and he wrote this book about how bad corrections is, not just in Connecticut, but that's what he has to go by. When you read this book, it's a fantastic depiction of what we don't know goes on in corrections. That's why I want him here. You were there, just like he was. And there's a lot of things that need to come out in corrections to fix it, because let's be honest, it's screwed up. Just like police work, just like anything, we need to focus on doing good. That sounds cheesy. Doing the right thing is better than doing what is acceptable. That's how I feel. So the book, I'll just wrote a thought-provoking critique of the U.S. prison system. It focused on punishment rather than rehabilitation. The author, Brent McCall and Michael Liebowitz, draws experience as guests of the state of Connecticut, saying that the system perpetuates criminal behavior rather than reducing it. One of the central arguments is that the prison system is focused on punishment rather than addressing the underlying cause of criminal behavior. It's just that offenders often have complex needs that are not being met, such as mental health, we know that, addiction, lack of education, job skills, without just these needs. Offenders are more likely to reoffend. And I could go on, but the one thing I read about it is after 3 years, it's a 60% or 67% recidivism.
Actually, it depends on how you're measuring recidivism. But yeah, it's normally about 67%. But as you go further along, 5 years, 7 years, 9 years, it even goes higher than that.
So that's saying we're not creating criminals, but we're not creating citizens when we're putting them there. And I said to Mike when we were coming here, I said, Mike, I didn't give a shit until I got involved with him. I didn't give a shit. They're criminals. They're rapists, they're robbers. They'll rob their mother. They'll do drugs. They'll do the wrong thing. So warehouse them. But as he said to me, you could explain a little bit more, but you did say that they go in, they watch TV, they eat, they shower, and they play video games. They get to play cards. What I don't understand, and I do believe that whole new woke thing is that we got to protect these prisoners. No, we don't. We have to make it more of if you give, you get. So if you give your time, you get something.
Back up a little bit just to give you some context.
Definitely.
So Brent McCall and I we came together in 2002 and got to know each other. We became friends immediately, even though neither one of us was on the path to change yet. But both of us like to do a bit of reading. Now, as we continued reading and reading, the identities that we were building for ourselves by educating ourselves in the types of stuff we were reading, it wasn't an identity consistent with being criminals. So we, at about the same time, decided to change, to become better human beings. So we read an abundance of self-help literature, motivational literature, psychology, criminal psychology. And after a few years of that, and on our path toward becoming better people, we felt that we had something to offer. So we designed a program called the Imprison Program. And we actually ran that program from 2008 to 2012 at McDougall Correctional Institution where we were housed. One of the critiques that we would often get from the inmates, because we were no nonsense, hold you accountable, you're responsible for your life, no one's to blame, I don't care what color you are, I don't care how you were raised, your neighborhood, whatever, your mom didn't hug you enough, it doesn't matter, you're responsible for your life. I still believe that. But the inmates would often say, yes, but look how the COs behave. Look how the COs behave. And while I still don't think that's an excuse for the inmates' behavior, I do see it as an obstacle, because I shouldn't have to, as somebody that's acting as a change agent, have to consistently address the issue of correctional officer misbehavior or correctional officer laziness, incompetence, corruption. So after a while, Brent actually got fed up and decided we had to write this book. Now, full disclosure, I was scared to death. I didn't want to write this book. I did it because Brent's my friend, and I wasn't going to let him do it alone. Brent is the type of human being that's fearless. He just does what he thinks is right and hell with the consequences. Me, a little bit different. I'm small, I can't fight, and I thought there's a real good chance that we're going to piss off inmates and staff, and I could end up being the casualty here. But nonetheless, I went along with it and I did it. He was the primary author. I certainly aided, I certainly contributed, but I want to give full credit where it's due. And so we ended up publishing the book as a response to the experience in corrections. Now I can kind of address something that Tom just said. There's 4 purposes laid out for corrections: incapacitation, punishment, deterrence, rehabilitation. Our thesis actually isn't that they focus on punishment. Our thesis is that the only thing they really do is incapacitate. It's not a punishment, it's not a deterrent, and they certainly don't rehabilitate. Now, ideally, in a correctional system, what you would have is you remove the offender from the street so he's no longer a risk to society. That's incapacitation. You punish him, you make the environment uncomfortable enough as to be a deterrent to future criminal behavior, and then this would act as an incentive to the rehabilitation. What corrections really is they put you in there. You have your TV, you have your radio, your Game Boys, your cards, your dominoes. You're basically living how they were living out in the street, except for without women. Criminals are lazy anyways in general, right? So if I'm going to prison and I'm a lazy guy and you give me the option, okay, I can dedicate myself to 5-6 hours a day of reading, introspection, doing the kind of work it's going to take to make myself a better human being, or I can play Game Boy. Most guys are going to choose Game Boy. And so that is basically what we feel is happening. And just I want to get your take on this, having worked in this. Okay, but as I was telling Tom on the way over here, if I was to tell you, look, here's going to be a scenario. We're going to take a system that's going to take place literally behind closed and locked doors, out of public view. We're going to have a powerful union that protects the employees. The only people likely ever to complain are going to be people that nobody cares about and nobody believes anyway because they have a reputation for lying. Everybody would say that's a recipe for disaster. But I find that when I bring out the disaster that is corrections, a lot of people give me pushback on it. A lot of it's irrelevant. Like they said, well, you're there, you deserve it. Fine. I deserve to be locked in a cage for the rest of my life, and you're not going to rehabilitate me. You're just going to warehouse me. Fine. But then don't falsely advertise and call yourself the Department of Correction. Call yourself the Department of Incapacitation. Put us in there, leave us there, and pay the bill. But once you say you're in there for corrections, and then I call you on it for not actually helping to correct people, don't respond. It's not our job to correct, because it sure as hell is by both your name, your directive, and your mission statement.
But don't they offer vocational programs and things like that?
Okay, so they also offer meals like turkey a la king, chicken a la king, chicken cacciatore. You've seen those meals, right? You've never seen them when you work there?
No.
Okay, well, I can tell you this. If you go by the name, you say, wow, look how wonderful they're eating. But then you go see it, and it's a totally different story. So, yes, there's vocational education programs run by the same unions that the correctional officers.
So you're saying the turkey a la king is more like turkey a la peasant?
Yeah, and what I'm saying is the voc ed class is more like the turkey a la crap that they feed. It's basically the same thing. Most of the programming in prison is not based on evidence of what works, which there's mountains of evidence about what actually works for reform offenders. That's part of the problem there is they rely on volunteers from the street, and the volunteers that come in to run their programs, they don't have the evidence to back them up in what they're doing. Couple of stats. They interviewed 171 correctional practitioners, people that are supposed to know this stuff. The fundamental concept, and anyone out there listening can look this up, criminogenic needs. It's what you need to know about if you want to reform offenders. 171 correctional practitioners, not one could answer the question. Not one could name 3 criminogenic needs. I'm going to wager right now, it's having worked, how long did you work in corrections?
20 calendars.
Did they ever teach you about criminogenic needs? Could you name 3?
Well, I haven't attended an academy in 28 years. Hold on, I haven't attended an academy in 28 years. But there's got to be freaking. That's why you have a custody side and a treatment side.
Well, that's true.
I never worked on the treatment side, but I can tell you, you need medical.
Yes.
What
we actually argued in here is that separation needs to go away. That you can't have a custody side and a treatment side because they ultimately end up pulling in different directions. The custody side thinks that they need to punish. The treatment side feels sorry for the criminals.
Custody isn't about custody is about making sure they stay inside, bro.
Yeah, you don't get out. In custody, the custody staff for the correctional officers, right? And then you have a major, or now they're deputy wardens in custody. They're responsible, like you said, for making sure that the inmates don't get out, but they're also in charge of enforcing the rules, making sure the inmates don't fight, don't do this, don't get high, all of that stuff. They do the strip searches when the inmates come in and out of visits or go on court trips. That's what they're for. That's what they do. They tend to view the inmates as scum, by and large. Not all, by any sense of imagination, but enough to where it's a problem. They sure as hell, as you just said, don't think it's their job to help change the offenders, despite the fact that the directive that they work under says that they're to be role models, that they're supposed to live by a code: professionalism, respect, integrity, dignity, excellence. That's just one of the things.
Damn, you got the pride down.
They're also duty bound by directive to report anytime they see a coworker behaving unethically. They're to report him to his supervisor. Do you think that happens in corrections? If you were a correctional officer and you went and reported your coworker because he was acting unethically, which could be anything from swearing to fraternizing with inmates, you'd be the one ostracized by your coworkers in a second. So the pressure is on you.
So what? All right. So now you're 25 calendars, and what kind of stuff did you see?
I've seen officers asleep on the job. I've seen male officers bragging to inmates about the female COs they're having sex with. I know of COs that have brought food and cell phones into inmates. And the main thing, though, is, those things happen, but the main thing is this: on a daily basis, they bring in, you're not supposed to bring into the block any electronic items. Phones are banned from prisons, right? They're like this. You can check a camera. The stuff that we claimed in the book, 90% of it's on camera. Go check. If I'm lying, I've been saying this stuff for 4 years. I've said it to the news. I've said it to the radio. I've said it in print. I'm saying it now. Anybody in corrections who wants to shut me up, all they got to do is go through here and say, okay, Liebowitz and McCall are lying. Here's a spoiler alert. It's not going to happen because we're not lying. We're telling the truth and they know it.
All right, but let me go to the phone thing. It'd be real simple then. Change the rule. Change the rule that the corrections officer can have a phone.
Sure, I don't care necessarily whether it's the rule or not. What I care about
They're breaking the rule.
Yeah, is when you are supposed to be setting the example and you break that rule constantly, the inmate then internalizes this and says, like me. He just happened to not get caught.
Mhm.
That's a very dangerous message to be sending to somebody, because you have to send a message to the criminal. Everybody's not like you. You are an anomaly. You're a crook. You're a wound on society that needs to be closed. It's your duty to change yourself. Your responsibility will help, but you have to put in the work. But when he says, "Well, change into what?" when everybody else is operating just like me, it seems to me there's nothing to change into.
Yeah, but Michael, you changed.
I did.
So you can't tell me that it's fucking happening. Excuse me. It's happening, and then
Sure, I get this a lot, Tom. Here's the problem with that argument. One, I have 130 verbal IQ. Inmates in general, and you can research this, severely violent offenders have IQs 17 points below average.
18 below.
Yeah. So that's number one. Number two, I happened to find a friend in Brent McCall who was in the same block together for 16 years, cellmate for 11, and worked on this together, where we would call each other out on a regular basis for our misbehaviors, our misdeeds, our screwed up thinking. Brent is also highly intelligent. If that's going to be the recipe that the DOC and that the public is counting on for rehabilitation, good luck.
Right, but again, intelligent doesn't necessarily equate over to being common sense either.
No, it doesn't, but it helps when you're reading books like the one that we wrote, for instance, or Inside the Criminal Mind, or Criminal Personality by Dr. Stanton Samanow, or Aaron Beck's book, Prisoners of Hate, The Cognitive Basis of Anger, Hostility, and Violence. It helps if you have a high IQ to comprehend that stuff, because especially when you're not getting any assistance. I'm not casting aspersion on inmates trying to say they're dumb, they can't learn. What I'm saying is, like most people, they need help. They need a specific kind of help, and they're just not getting it. Now, look, they're criminals. I don't give a fuck. I'm not going to help them. They don't need my help. That's fine. When he gets out and kills your mother, rapes your sister, and robs your store, well, then just remember you didn't think he should be helped, because you're not going to foot the bill to keep him in prison for the rest of his life.
No, but I'm not saying.
Not you personally.
No, I want to make sure you understand, but that's not my thought process.
No, I'm talking. Well, when I say you, I'm not talking about you. I'm talking about your general Joe citizen. Mm-hmm. Out there who looks at it and says, corrections, I don't care what happens in there. These guys are criminals, lock them up.
But that's why we're doing this podcast. To be able to tell the same people like him and I, he worked in it, I was in it. My job was to find you,
yes,
and put you away.
Yes.
That's all I care about.
Now, hold on a second. So, when I first got in, I learned one thing. That a lot of guys taught me that said, guys who get locked up, you make connections or corrections. You either become a smarter criminal or you work on yourself.
Yeah.
What do you think about that?
Well, I think the problem is that while I don't think that an environment makes a person, let me give you an example. If you take a little kid and he grows up in a screwed up environment like I did, right? Mm-hmm. I don't think the fact that my parents were heroin addicts, my father was an alcoholic, and there was constant violence surrounding me is an excuse for my poor behavior.
Of course,
at all. But while I don't think
so, you think you're going to be an anomaly, and you're going to be a fucking Ivy League grad coming out of there?
No, what I'm saying is that the majority of people, or maybe not the majority, but enough people have been through worse than I did to make it. Now, that said, that doesn't mean that it's okay for parents to act like that, and it doesn't mean that someone growing up in that environment is not going to have a higher chance of screwing up. So I say that because when you go into corrections, while I put the 100% responsibility on the inmate, he has to do what's necessary to change. It's his life.
There you go.
That doesn't, however, absolve the Department of Corrections from providing an environment that's conducive to the inmate doing so. It's going to increase the chances and increase the amount of offenders that actually rehabilitate.
So what do you think about when they say it all starts at home?
What do you mean, as far as your upbringing?
Yeah. What do you think it starts at home?
Well,
okay, hold on a second. I'm going to tell you something about me.
Okay.
I'm from a third world country, South Bronx. Okay. In the 70s, the South Bronx, I'm going to quote a good friend of mine, Ralph Friedman. He said it looked like Berlin after the war. In 1974, only 60% of the Bronx was livable because cats were lighting up the freaking buildings for freaking insurance money. Okay, they said that Ralph Friedman was a cop in the Bronx, and he told me, he said it looked like freaking Berlin after the war. So when people say you're not a product of your environment, there's obviously, we know there's no absolutes, but I think a big part of it starts at home.
Well, maybe so, but nonetheless,
Maybe so.
Well, here's the problem. Even growing up in that environment, you didn't end up in prison. You ended up working in one. You ended up, like you said to me earlier,
Honestly,
that you learned a trade.
okay, and it's,
That you put forth the effort to learn a trade. You told us a story how
Well-
you were working when you were 16. When I was 16, I had no interest in working. I had in high screwing girls and doing robberies.
Yeah, we
okay.
did too, but we didn't do it.
When
But you didn't do it, and that's the whole point.
What makes it
And
not
also-
doing
well,
or doing?
It ultimately comes down to human choice. You're talking about the vast majority of people that grow up poor in poor neighborhoods don't turn to crime. The ones that get the emphasis, the ones that get the attention, are the ones that do turn to crime. If you've got 15 kids that are in the street corner selling dope and shooting the place up, compared to 100 people that are trying to live peacefully, that those 115, 100 kids that are, 15 kids that are screwing up, that's who's going to get the attention. And I cannot believe that I'm here with two law enforcement guys, and I'm the one speaking about personal responsibility.
No,
What
we're
did I
not. No.
What did I
Let me
read?
stop. And the reason why I'm going to this start is no. I believe it's personal responsibility. I had it. Because I told you,
Yeah.
I could be sitting where you sit. He can too.
I did dumb
precisely.
shit. I just didn't get caught.
Right. But wait a minute. Let's go
Yeah,
back
for me,
to
it
the
wasn't dumb shit. It was a lifestyle, and that I think is the fundamental difference. I craved harming people. I craved stealing on a daily basis.
When did this start with?
Yeah, well, that was one of my questions for you. So
I don't.
Sorry.
When did it start?
No.
When did this fucking crave start?
Okay, well, I'm sure Tom can tell you he was the youth officer in town. In the neighborhood I grew up in a suburb. But if there was crimes happening in town, you know where they came? They came to my neighborhood because they knew it was up. We were vandalizing stuff. We used to, just for the fun of it, we would boot, one guy would boost another guy up, and we'd jump up on the street signs, remember, and rip them down. Just for fun to vandalize. We used to throw rocks and eggs at houses, slash tires on cars. I mean, it was just what we were attracted to. Now, that was my group of friends. There were plenty of kids in my neighborhood that stayed the hell away from us that weren't doing that kind of stuff. The same basic environment, they weren't attracted to crime. Why? I ultimately don't know. What I do know is that the older you get, the more responsible you have to be for your own choices. And I stand by that. That said, I'm not saying the environment doesn't matter, which is why I'm critiquing corrections for the kind of environment.
well, all right, let me go back to the corrections. So every single day,
Yes.
those corrections officers. So
Yes.
I'm going to use there's 100 corrections officers in McDougal. I'll use McDougal, and I don't
Okay.
know how many, but I'm going to use percentage. 100 people. Out of the 100, is 100% of the corrections officers doing the wrong thing all
Yes.
day?
100%.
And I'll tell you
Come
why.
on,
Well, no,
come
I'll tell you why.
on.
No, let me-
Listen,
I'm
I'm prepared to defend the
Wait,
statement.
I'm with you.
100%.
I'm with you. Wait a minute.
JG's throwing the bullshit flag right now, boys and
No,
girls.
no,
JG's throwing the flag.
No.
How many of your coworkers did you report when you
Wait,
worked? How
wait,
many of your
wait,
coworkers
don't
did you
even
report to
answer
the
that.
superior?
Don't
Why
answer
not?
Because what I want to say is this, is because it's been allowed. The new officers coming on see the old officer doing all the shit you just said they were doing,
Yes.
and they might have been taught it, but the older guys say, "Don't worry about that stuff. You're
They
good."
internalize it.
Right?
Of
And they
course.
say, "Okay, leave it alone.
Sure.
Here's your lifestyle now. This is your job. Now
Yes.
you have a mortgage. Now you have a house. Now you have a kid. Now you have a,
Yes.
and you're seeing now. God forbid you see something that's I don't know where the scale tips, right?
Something
So-
erroneous.
I don't even want to say that, because what he's saying is, if we don't check ourselves for the minimal, if you're a corrections officer and you're trying to correct the criminals, then you need to be correct yourself, and you have to show them that. And I'm not talking about being Catholic, Christian, Jewish, whatever. I'm talking about being good people and following the rules. Now, I don't give a shit if you get out of there and you do something different, but
You
For-
have to live as a role model, and here's how I'm going to defend my statement. Because I used to be the guy who had said there's good COs, there's bad COs. I now take that back. I once asked a 20-year veteran officer, 20 years on the job. He said to me, "Lee, I knew him well. He's a good guy." When I say they're not good COs, I'm not saying they're not nice people, not good guys, not guys I wouldn't like to hang out with, talk to, whatever. I'm saying as a CO, as far as doing the job of a correctional officer goes, I've never met one. A CO said to me, "Lee, come on, you got to admit there's good COs." 20 years on the job, I told him, "Okay, do me a favor, name 5." He couldn't do it. Could not name 5.
No, man.
Cannot name 5. So here's my question.
He was probably a piece of shit
Here's my
himself.
question. No, actually, he was one of the better ones. But here's my question to you. You ever swear on the job?
I swear every day of my life.
Violation of directive. Right there, you're not doing your job. 2, You ever report a coworker for his unethical behavior? If he's having conversations he's not supposed to be having, if he maybe
Have I pulled over somebody on the side? Yeah, I've checked somebody.
No. Have you reported him to a superior?
Well, he was a superior. I was a
Oh,
superior.
but he wasn't always a superior.
I was never
Hold
superior.
on. Now you're duty bound. Now you're duty bound by your directive to report him. So my statement is simple: if you have a job to do, whatever job it is, I don't care if you're an electrician, a plumber, whatever. If this is what you're supposed to be doing, these are the guidelines that are mandated that you follow, and then you don't follow them, and on a regular basis you don't follow them. On what grounds then do we stop and say this person does their job like they're supposed to?
The only place you're ever going to find that absolute, bro, is a freaking micrometer.
Well, I'll tell you what, when you're at McDonald's, somehow McDonald's all across the world work on the principle of duplication. All franchises do. It's based on the idea that you have to duplicate what you have in one place so it's the same product everywhere. The difference between McDonald's and corrections is this. The McDonald's
shit comes out of a bucket pre-made.
That's fine. The McDonald's employee strays from what he's supposed to be doing, he gets fired. The correctional officer strays, nothing happens. If he commits an egregious offense, he gets a warning, and then he gets 6 months. And if he doesn't act up in that 6 months, he starts over. I don't remember the exact way the contract works, but I know it works something like that. According to the union negotiations, you have to commit X amount of offenses within a given period of time before anything real can happen to you. That is a recipe for disaster, especially when it's taking place out of public view. And like I said, the only people likely to complain are the crooks. And by the way, let me just say this. On 90% of the occasion, the cops and the crooks, they're in line with each other, which is why our book pissed everybody off, because the cops like to sit around and do nothing, and the inmates like to get away with murder. So it works well for
Wait a minute. Don't say cops. Say
okay, you're right. We call them cops when we're in prison.
They'll do that.
Yeah, correctional officers. They like to sit back, shoot the shit with one another, and not worry about inmates making noise, slamming dominoes, all the things the inmates aren't supposed to be doing. And the inmates like to get away with screaming and hollering and slamming dominoes. So they love it, which is why we pissed everybody off when we wrote the book.
It's a micro society. You got to let you guys police yourselves a little bit.
Okay, so why isn't that in the directive? How come they don't?
It's untangible.
No, how come they don't make that argument to the public?
It's untangible.
How come when the commissioner and the governor are in a press conference, they don't say that? Why don't they say, no, we got to let the guys police themselves, because they'd be holy hell to pay if they ever say that. So they go up there and they bullshit the public and everybody's happy with it. But I'm here to not let them get away with it. And that's why I'm on this podcast. That's why I took the risk in prison. That's why I take the risk out here. I know people are going to be upset.
Yeah, but do you think it's easier to throw stones now that you're outside? Because like I said, you did go into jail as a little young white boy.
I did go into jail as a little young white boy.
Exactly.
And we had correctional officers and other correctional employees who tried to get me harmed severely. I knew that was going to happen going in. I did it anyway. While I was in prison, I did multiple interviews. There's a record going back 4 years of my interviews with the media, Channel 30, WTIC, and the Connecticut Examiner, where I've talked exactly about what I think about corrections. I also wrote a book, and I've written numerous articles. Nobody was under any illusion that I stood for anything but what I stood for. I did it. Like I said, I was scared to death. I knew, little white boy, I knew I was in danger. A correctional officer told a friend of mine, he's dead now, but this guy was 6'3", 380 pounds. Correctional officer told me, Liebowitz badmouthed you in the book. Luckily, the guy was my friend and came to me and told me, you tell a 380-pound guy who's in prison for double murder, by the way, that I'm badmouthing in a book? What's the implication? What is that correctional officer trying to do? When he then tells him, I'm surprised you let that guy stay in the block. You're trying to get me hurt. Now, how many incidents of that happened that I'm not aware of, that weren't my friend, that didn't come and told me? He wasn't the only one that told me. He was just the only one willing to go on the record. But how many were there? So to say, well, it's easier to cast stones when I'm out here, no, sir. I did that plenty while I was in there. And
nothing comes without self-sacrifice.
No, and I will say, that's how I got involved with Michael, because he did speak up while you were in corrections.
Yes, sir.
And again, by being with you, I'm sort of stepped on the outside. But because I believe it's the right thing to do, exactly what you're doing. You believe it's the right thing. And all C means when you say micro society is somewhat, it's not in the directive. And me and you talked about that. You say, well, I don't want to break any rules. I don't want to break any laws. I broke a law coming here. I went over the speed limit. Now, I broke the law. So I don't know where to go with that, but I get it. So I don't know where, I talked about it, the scale. Where is the scale to make it a little bit of a livable society as well as, but like we said, most people look at corrections is we're housing shitheads. That's what our job is. Throw the shits out and nobody's going to complain. I do believe this is the question I have for you.
Yeah.
How do we fix it? Don't give me all the bullshit you've been writing in the books and stuff. But I'm
going to throw the flag on that. There's no bullshit in the book.
No. I don't.
You're right.
No, this book is so well written and it's so well. And I don't want to say bullshit. I want to hear your words, the exact words, because it'd be real simple to fix this, but people have to hear it.
Well, the problem is you've got a lot of entrenched interests that are dependent on corrections. People that have jobs, whether they be correctional officers, medical staff, voc ed teachers. So it's not an easy thing to fix, especially when they're unionized. So I would say two things. I would say right off the bat: you need to break the correctional officers union, get rid of it. Two, you need to start paying people in corrections based on the results they get, like you do in a normal business, rather than just paying them and saying, who cares the results?
So you're going to humanize business now.
I'm gonna businessize corrections, as has been done in the UK. There's a corporation actually called Serco. You can look it up. And they actually have private prisons. They're not run the way private prisons are in the United States. They have prisons in New Zealand, Australia, and in the UK. And the way they do it is they give bonuses based on reductions in recidivism. I'm not saying they have the perfect system. I haven't studied it enough. I'm just saying that that's a good model.
So how can you monitor somebody's, how can you're going to give somebody a bonus in December if a guy's locked up? You're not going to know if he's going to do anything for a couple of years.
No.
So it sounds like a lot of cats are going to go hungry with this theory.
No. We already know, for instance, what works in corrections. There's core correctional practices. There's evidence-based practices. There's the risk-need responsivity model. And there's also assessment, the level of service inventory assessment tool. So there's things that you could do, implement immediately that you already know work. You could have somebody, for instance, that's what's the word I'm looking for here? Not moderating. I can't
Monitoring?
Monitoring. There you go.
Okay.
Wow, for once in my life, I couldn't figure out the word. But yeah, so maybe you have somebody monitoring. There's other feedback mechanisms, not perfect. But and you also, obviously, you don't base it on one guy. But if you've got a correctional institution, if you've got two, say you open them, and you monitor from a month, 6 months, 1 year, and one of them, the guys that get out, 90% of them are back, and the other one, 10%, you can get a pretty good idea that one of them's doing well, and the other.
Okay, so what about the motherfucker that just, I'm gonna sell drugs? You know what? I'm never gonna have a 9 to 5.
Lock them up.
I'm selling drugs. I never got your clock in my role. And guess what, bro? You know, it'd be cheaper to be a street sweeper, you know, run with the creeps, you know, shuffle my feet.
Well, my view is this.
What's up with that
I'm
guy?
gonna tell you. So you go to prison, and if you don't want to, if we have a prison, let's say we have Jimmy, that's your name, right? Jimmy's prison. And Jimmy's prison offers education. It offers programming, all the things that an inmate's going to need to reform himself, right? And then you've got a guy that you just talked about. You know what you do with him? You put him in a fucking cage and you leave him there. And you say, all right, asshole, you don't want to conform. You want to be a non-conformist. You don't want to punch a clock. Well, this is what you get. But you're not going to be watching television. You're not going to be playing spades all goddamn day. You're not going to be playing basketball.
Look who showed up to the dance. Look who showed up to the dance.
I agree with that.
You understand? You're not going to be having a good time, which is what you do now. Right now, you go into prison. They now have the tablet where they can watch movies all day. And I'm not saying get rid of the tablets. I think they can be a good tool, especially for education. But what I'm saying is, when you're coming off the street and you can go in there and play video games, watch movies, and hang out with your pals, that's what you're going to do. So you have to eliminate that as an option, but then offer the tools that are going to help them improve their lives.
I 100% agree with that. I believe that corrections should be, as I said before, a give and take, right? So if they have to give their time, they don't get anything for just being there.
I just believe you can't program somebody until you unprogram the bad stuff.
Well, again, the unprogram is just like you said. What is
You're trying to record on a tape that got a bunch of shitty music on it. You still got the shitty music underneath it, brother.
Right.
You still got a bad track underneath it.
But if we're talking about, so you have to go to the psychological part, you have to go to the physical part.
How's that phone feel in your hand? What was the first text you sent on that phone?
I don't remember.
You watching porn on that thing?
No, but I do get
Yeah,
an awful
right.
lot of invites to watch porn. Like on Twitter and on Facebook. I get all these things. I just want to show you something. How quick. Now, if I can do this in 2-second Google search, right?
My man said Google.
That's what it is.
I know.
I'll just, again, Mike, I didn't mean your book is bullshit. I meant
No.
I really, really want from the
So
heart.
just check this out. Evidence-based practices. Look how many things come up. Now I can go to evidence-based practices. Hold on. Evidence-based practices in corrections.
But that on the dollar gets me on the bus, though, Michael.
No, it doesn't.
It does. Hold on a second. Because you know why? Because everybody with a little title wants to get their name in some journal. Hold on. Everybody wants to think of the new fucking catchy acronym that they suffer from 1, 2, 3 barbecue, AZT.
Yeah.
Everybody wants to think of the new fucking acronym that's going to be the latest thing, and then Big Pharma is going to think of the new pill.
They've got meta-analyses done of these programs, test after test that are peer-reviewed, and the conclusion is what works. They know what works. It's out there. They can implement.
50 years ago, we had like a third of penitentiaries. All right, hold on a second.
Yeah.
You know what a penitentiary is?
It comes from the word penance.
To
You're
do-
supposed to go to make penance.
There you go.
Yeah.
I'm a Roman Catholic. Sorry. So I'm going to throw a little bit of that in there for you. So why is it that we got so much correctional facilities now? Because you know why we got so many correctional facilities? Because parents got their tied hands with these kids because they can't look at them the wrong way. Why? Because in school, these teachers are indoctrinating them. Your kid looks at, oh my God, if your mom looks at you the wrong way, you could call this number and you could call that number. And that's why we're in this fucking total state of bitch assness. In 20 years, who's going to be a cop? Who's going to be a Marine? Officer pronoun?
Okay.
Who the fuck is going to defend? Who the fuck is going to defend us when
fine.
I ring the doorbell and the next thing I know, some fucking kid with purple hair that looks like he works at Forever 21 is coming there to fucking help me, and that kid's there to help me, but he's fucking allergic to a peanut butter and jelly fucking sandwich. Come on, bro.
Yeah,
Come on,
that's
bro.
all fine and dandy. Hold on.
Come to reality. Come for the
Hold on a
ride.
second. Hold on,
I
brother.
got your ticket
Hold on.
here for
Hold on a
reality.
second. Am I here to defend woke culture, or am I here to offer my critique of correction?
Well,
Because I'm.
But
here to
that's
tell
what's
you what's
taking them
wrong
to
with
correction. That's what's
Okay,
taking them.
That's fine. Whatever's taking them there, I don't care if it's the mommy, the daddy, the bus, or the local wokester. Once they're there, if you're going to have a Department of Corrections where people are going to get paid to correct offenders, they damn sure ought to be correcting them. And if they're going to do that, they need to know what the evidence says works. I just, in a quick Google search, was able to come up with an abundance of programs to show what works and what doesn't work in rehabilitating offenders. If I can do that, certainly those who work in corrections can do it.
okay. All right. So perfect. We have that. Michael, how do you fix right now? I call Governor Lamont and say, hey, I have a kid. He could fix corrections. How do you do it? What's your first thing you do?
The first thing I do is get rid of the union. I tell them, I don't give a damn about your negotiated contracts, your COLA agreements, or anything else. You've got to get rid of the union, because as long as they know that their behavior is going to go without any consequences, you're going to continue to get what you have. Also, I think that prisons should be audited. You know this. Somebody comes, a commissioner, governor, anybody comes to tour the facility, and the dog and pony show starts. Everybody gets a phone call. These people are coming. The floors start getting waxed. The whole place, the whole place starts getting cleaned.
We got company coming.
All to pretend it's something that it isn't. A lieutenant tours the prison. Every cop calls every CO, calls the block. Lieutenant's on his way, so get your behavior in line. But here's the thing that amazes me. The lieutenant used to be a CO. He knows that's what's happening. A warden once said to me, hey, how did you know I was coming into the block? Did they call? And I said, well, I don't know what they did this time, but they do that. The warden said to me, you think I don't know that? I used to be the one making the call. But yet everyone puts on the show.
Well, you also said that you got phone calls saying, hey, you're being searched today. Take care of your shit. Or that, that was part of your book.
Yes, I've seen correctional officers make announcements. They're shaking down the block today, so get rid of your
Make sure you get rid of it.
Yeah.
I mean, that should be, in and itself, should be a crime.
Should be.
But Jimmy, it happens.
It happens.
But it happens in police work also.
Yeah.
I mean, again, the only thing I can tell you out of don't know that I'm dealing with a criminal. I don't know if I'm dealing with.
Butcher, baker, candle maker.
Exactly. I have to do
Soccer
everything,
mom.
and I have to make that decision right away. And a lot of times it's not the right decision, but you have to stick with your decision because it's what you learn and how you do it, right? I can tell you that there's a lot of bad police officers. There's a lot of good police officers. Give me a couple of examples of Wethersfield police officers when you were a kid. Now, I've heard you on a couple of podcasts, but
That were good or that were bad?
tell me what's bad.
Okay, I'll give you two examples. One, so my father and his wife beat and kicked and stomped my mother in the street in Mitchell Court in Wethersfield. So Mitchell Court, you know, Tom, it's a dead end.
Mhm.
And there's a circle at the end. So my mother was in the circle. They kicked and stomped her. I was 8 or 9, and I'm crying. I thought my mother was going to die. I'm crying my eyes out. A Wethersfield cop comes, grabs me, shakes me, and tells me, "Stop crying and act like a man." 8 years old, my mother, I'm thinking she's going to die. You tell me to act like a man. I'm going to say he's a bad cop. I'm 9 years old. Spray paint cans at him. I think 9. The cop comes, he says, "Don't try to sweet talk me, punk." He says, what's your name? I told him Michael Liebowitz. He says, "Liebowitz, huh? Figures." An obvious reference to my parents. He then grabs my friend and I, both small 9-year-olds, one in each hand, lifts us up off the ground and slams us into the shed. I'm going to say that's bad policing.
Who was that?
That was Officer Pock.
He's dead.
Okay, he may be dead, but he was still a bad cop.
No, I'm just telling you for any
Okay,
kind of
another officer. The police came to arrest my father, and I was in the basement in my garage actually, and I went to open my grandmother's car door to let the cop into the car. The cop grabbed me, dragged me into the corner of my garage, and told me, there's not a lot of people around to see what's going around right now. See what's going on. Obviously, he meant to do me physical harm. Luckily, I was on the phone, and he saw that, so I didn't take a beating. I'm going to say that was Officer Mull.
Okay.
And the cop that shook me was the aforementioned Goldberg. I don't remember if you mentioned him during the podcast or.
No, that was awful.
It doesn't matter. I'm sorry, but that's who that was. I mean, I have no problem naming names.
No.
But now, let me say this. Kevin Dillon, yourself. I still remember, I'll never forget it. And you're not the only one. I was at a dance in Wethersfield. I went to the dance. I was 15, drunk, high, everything. You pulled me aside, you patted me down, and you said, "Michael, listen." He said, "Even if you had anything, I wasn't going to take you in. I was just going to take the stuff from you." He said, "I knew your father. I knew him when he was a kid. He was a good kid, but he had low self-esteem, so he used drugs." He basically told me that's what I was doing now, and I needed to straighten my life out. Another time, you had heard a rumor that I was selling drugs. At the time, I really wasn't. Not that I never did, but at this time, I didn't. But you came to my house, and you said, "Michael, come here for a minute. If you're selling drugs, stop it. Cut it out, man. You're gonna end up in trouble. Just cut it out." To me, that's good police work. You're reaching out. You're showing an interest in all us kids from the projects. Of course, we're from the projects, so we're distrustful, and we're all. It did.
Right, but I broke rules. Michael, I broke rules.
Well, did you real rules?
Yeah, those are real rules.
Oh, okay. Well, I didn't know that.
Yeah, but that makes me a different person. It made me a better person.
Okay. Well, maybe then it doesn't make a good cop, but it makes for a good person. And the two maybe don't go hand in hand.
I was a very good cop for juveniles. And the definition of a good cop will tell you when you're in police work, it's about how many arrests you made, how many big arrests you made, and that kind of stuff. That's never what my idea. My idea is it came out afterwards. Community policing, that kind of stuff. Get to know your community, because if you get to know your community, you know what's going on, what the crime is. I didn't make it up that somebody told me you were selling drugs. Somebody told me you were selling drugs.
Yeah, sure they did.
I went to you. There could have been an active investigation. Well, I broke a rule. I can't do, "Hey, selling drugs, knock this shit off," right? Because I wanted to fix you because I saw something in you didn't see, right? I saw me somewhat. I mean, obviously you're smarter and definitely have hair, but
it's gray though.
I will just say that I will still judge by when you say somebody breaks a rule or a thing. There's reasons why we do it, and not necessarily for a benefit to me.
Justify that rule breaking, but I will say this. There's a big difference between breaking the rule because you're trying to help somebody so that you can do a better job, and breaking a rule so you can watch porn and play video games on your phone, or taking a nap on the job, doing other things in plain sight, talking. I'd say that's a different type of rule breaking. I'm not justifying any. I don't know about the rules for cops. I couldn't say. I have no clue. I haven't looked into it.
Right.
For correctional officers, I do. And I just think that when you're comparing what you're talking about and what I'm talking about, they're doing, it's really, not comparable.
Right. I get it, but I wanted to make sure you understood that, the scale again, go back to the scale. So that's all I was trying to say.
So, quick question,
Go ahead,
Michael.
bro.
How old were you when you got locked up?
21.
21. Damn.
It started with
Ooh.
19, right? The whole court case.
I've been getting court cases since I was 12, but the specific stuff that led me into prison, yeah, it started when I was 19.
So, what conspired? What conspired this? What the hell took you up to Talent? Because that's a whole 40-minute ride.
Well, my ex-girlfriend, I was dating a girl that lived in East Hartford.
Mhm.
We broke up. She had a new boyfriend. They moved to Talent.
Okay.
And so I arranged with 3 of my friends to break in their house in Talent. They beat up the boyfriend and they stabbed him. So that's why I had that case in Talent.
All right. I remember it now. Like I said, now that you start throwing details out. We were talking about it earlier. Now it hit me when I remember when it happened. I was like, I was 21. I never, like I said, the closest I got to Talent was going up to freaking Yukon for spring weekend. I was like, how the hell did you get up to Talent, dude?
Yeah, it wasn't exactly my hangout spot.
And he didn't go. That's the whole point. He didn't go. And now he did a couple other things, but in reality, I arrested people for way more serious crime that didn't do an eighth or a quarter of what you did. So I did feel like that's.
So yes. So how did you get so many years? How the fuck did they vilify you? Because they killed this dude. They fucking sodomized him.
No, he didn't die. He was hurt, and I don't ever want to minimize.
No, and I want to make sure. We're still victims.
Yeah, they were victims. So when people ask me, do you think you deserve the time? It's like a catch-22 question for me, because I don't want to come off as I'm minimizing the harm I did, because I'm certainly not. But from a strictly objective viewpoint, if you look at the amount of time that I got for that crime compared to what other people get for similar crimes, I got hosed. Seriously. Now, someone could always say, well, how about all the crimes you got away with? Well, fine. I go with that. I wasn't a good person. I'll stipulate that. Like, hey, remember I did it in court. The prosecutor said all kinds of bad things about me from when I was a kid, and I put my hand up. I said, Your Honor, we can stipulate for the record I was a monster. I'm not trying to minimize that or downplay it or anything else. I'm not that person now. And ultimately, the people in society have to decide. I did 25 years. I made a better person of myself. The evidence shows I've made a better person of myself. I'm not asking anybody to trust me, not up front. Just give me a chance. Give me a shot to live my life. And if they decide, no, we don't want to, well, that's their right too. But I don't know how a society can function if we're going to have a prison system where people are being released and we just say after their time, we're never going to give them a chance. It can't work that way. At least I can't see it working that way.
So you got locked up with the county jail first, right?
Yes.
You took it right to county where they sent you to Hartford?
Yes.
Okay, so
And
you're
then
at the
to
Manor.
Walker, because I had a high bond. So
Okay.
I ended up in the high bond unit at Walker.
Okay, and so then you just stayed right there, right next door.
Yes.
What was it like being 21 and being at?
Well, I joined a gang for protection. I did straight up. I remember because when I was first in
Who
HCC,
took you in? Some equal opportunity, man?
when I was in HCC, I made a mistake. They asked me, where are you from? Now, I was from Wethersfield, but I hung around on Franklin Avenue in Hartford. So they said, where are you from? But anyways, so the problem was Franklin Avenue, there's the Italian section where you get the gelato, but a little bit down.
It's all the Puerto Ricans.
Yeah, a little bit down, you had the Latin King section.
Yeah.
So when the kid in the dorm asked me, or in the day room said, where are you from? And I said, Franklin Avenue. They said, oh, you must be a king. I said, oh, no, I'm not.
You're like, I work like a queen.
No, I'm not. Yeah. But they're like, no, you are. And so, I ended up, it was someone I knew who was there. He used to be a king. And I called him over. I said, listen, I tell these dudes. And he told them, no, he's not. But I decided, okay, I better join something here before I end up hurt. And so I did. Now, that only lasted a year, and I got out of that gang. And I never looked back on it, and certainly don't regret getting out of it. But that's what I did early. You know what I mean? It is what it is. I was scared. Truth be told, I have no problem putting it out there. I was a coward my whole life. That's why I resorted to weapons. My father in town had a reputation for being tough. I wanted to be like him. I couldn't fight. I was smaller than the kids in my neighborhood. Whenever I tried, I got beat up. So I said, what can I do? Well, I know what I can do. I can become the most ruthless among the bunch, and I can use weapons, whether it be bat, knife, gun, whatever. So that's what I did. But just as I was scared out there, I was scared in prison.
Well, there ain't nothing, plenty to be scared about inside. Plenty to be scared.
Fair enough.
So you got in there. You said it was around 2002 when you started getting into the writing part?
Well, no, I started reading late '98, even though I hadn't turned my life around. But in 2004, I made the decision I was going to go straight. And at that time, up till then, I had been sniffing heroin, smoking weed.
In prison?
In prison, yeah. But at that point, I decided I've got to cut all that out. So I haven't gotten high since May 2004. And from then on, I've just been, I'm not going to say a straight line where I make it sound like I have had no setbacks, because I certainly have. But I never gave up, and I kept fighting. Same thing now. When I have moral lapses, I correct them, move forward, and do the best I can. That's the most I can hope for myself, or I think what anybody can hope for themselves.
And the only question I want to go back to our town is, if you can go back to one spot in your life to change it, what would that spot be?
It's funny because we once played a game in prison where we were asking these questions and they had conversations, and they said, well, if you could change one thing, what would you do? The problem is this: suppose I go back to the night that I committed this offense, the main offense, the stabbing, right? And I say, you know what, I'm not going to do this tonight. The problem was
you would have done something else.
Yeah, so it doesn't make any sense. Like it's incoherent to say, well, I would change this one thing. I changed that one thing. I'm out. Next thing you know, I'm in for murder for something else.
Well, let me go back a few more years, a few years prior to that, where you said that all of a sudden you saw your dad and you wanted to be like him, but then you emulate that, right?
Yeah.
So at what, were you 10 then? Were you 8 there? Were you 5 there? You know what I mean? Like that.
It's
there
hard
has
to
to be
say.
a spot.
I really don't remember when I decided that I want, that type of thing. I just don't know. I don't really know the answer. I just know that I always wanted to be accepted by my father. I always wanted to be loved by my father. And I thought that this was the way to get it. And just to give a quick example, it's kind of off target, but it'll maybe exemplify what I'm talking about here. When I was 20 years old, I went out to buy a bag of weed. And we went to Rice Heights first, and they didn't have any. So the kids I was with.
It's called cannabis now, and it's legal.
Yeah, then it was. So
I lived in Rice Heights.
So they said, well, why don't we go to the North End? Now in the North End, it's we don't know people. Like I knew most of the dudes in Rice Heights. I didn't know North End, and they said, well, what happens if they beat us? Now I never thought they were going to beat us, but I made the comment and I said, well, I had a gun on me. I said, they beat us, I'm shooting. Never thought they were going to beat us. Problem is now they beat us. So now I've been running my mouth for 20 minutes, whatever it was, how you beat me, they beat me, I'm shooting them. Now I've got a gun. They know I got the gun. The kid just beat me. What do I do? So I pulled out and I shot at him. I don't know if I hit him or not. I got home. I woke up my father. I said, listen, I just shot this dude. My father said, all right, man, that's good. Rolled over and went back to sleep.
Wow.
You know what I mean? Back to what you said earlier, obviously environment makes a difference. The difference between a father that's going to do that and that's going to say, what the fuck is wrong with you, obviously makes a difference. All I'm saying is that in the final analysis, it comes down to the individual has to make the right decision, regardless of what the environment is.
I totally agree. And I also want to say, from this point on, what do you want to, what's your accomplishment like? What do you want? I know we're doing these podcasts.
What's on the agenda? What's you know what I mean?
Make things better for you, and how can we get people?
All right, you got the Coke, you got the soda, and the Snicker bar.
Yes, I did.
What now?
My goal is to become a talk show host. I want to host a talk show. I'm pretty good at it. I can run my mouth pretty well. I'm pretty educated. I enjoy doing it, and I also want to have an influence on the types of things that I want to influence, like, for instance, corrections, but it goes beyond that. I mean, I have a lot of political views. I do very well arguing for the political positions I support, and that's what I want to spend my life doing.
What do you support?
Oh, don't say that.
you really?
No, we don't want that. I don't want to be let down anyway.
I would be classified as a libertarian. If you were
I love it.
To pigeonhole me, I'd be a libertarian. I think that
you've been bullied into it. I don't blame you.
No, libertarian is something you are too.
Yeah, I believe strongly in the Second Amendment. For instance, I believe that all drugs should be legal. I don't think that anybody has a right to tell another human being what they can or can't put into their body. I don't believe in social welfare programs. I believe people should be able to keep the money that they earn. I think that contracts between consenting adults should be not interfered with by the government, so there shouldn't be minimum wage laws. And, you know, I mean, I can go on, but I think you get the gist. Ultimately, low taxes, personal freedom, deregulate the economy. There you go.
So now I like him again.
I thought he was gonna come off on some other stuff. I thought, you know, I mean, but yeah, cannabis, it's legal now.
It is.
So yeah, so good for you, man. So you're out here 25 years, man. You know, welcome back to this side.
Thank you.
You know, this side has its challenges too. This side ain't free either. Unfortunately, this side's got its own, like I said, challenges and fucking dilemmas.
Sure.
But you know what I mean?
And make sure you know that you do have people to reach out.
Absolutely.
Yeah, dude.
You know, I told you that when I went for you,
Yes,
and
you did.
I will say, I want to make sure that you know that there is people supporting you. Your family, they reached out to me, I guess, during one of the holidays. One of your uncle said, "Holy cow, you were like the talk of the." I said, "No, I don't want to be the talk. I want him to be the talk." And I definitely think you have the right people backing you. Sebi is unbelievable.
Oh, he's phenomenal. Yeah.
I did hear you on his son's podcast. His son is like 20, 21.
Yeah.
He does a podcast. It was a really good podcast for, I think, just his knowledge base of the world. Asking questions were pretty. They were good. They were. It was good. And I want to make sure you know from this point on that you said the right things, but how do I help you, and how do people get a hold of you? You know, from this point, if people want an email, if they want to.
This is when you got to have all your platforms ready.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, you can get me on email at Liebo, Liebo 1271.gmail.com. You can get me on Twitter. That's Liebo is out, because out of prison, not out of the closet.
You can't shame no one. See that? You're wrong already. You better learn. You see, you're
I might
shaming.
get canceled.
See, you're shaming.
But so Liebo is out on Twitter, on Facebook. I'm just Michael Liebowitz, and on Instagram and TikTok, I'm Liberty Liebo for the Libertarian.
And where are you next? What's your next podcast? Your next
next stop?
Well, there's no telling. I'm on the Todd Feinberg show on a semi-regular basis, so I'm sure I'll be on there in a couple of days, and TikTok and Instagram every night, and pretty soon I'll be somewhere else. I just don't know. Oh, actually, well, no, that's just a recording. Wednesday night, we actually have a Facebook event. It's the Stand in Your Power. It's a chat room on Facebook. Now, I don't really know the ins and outs on how to get there. I just know there's a link, and you can click it. If you go to my Facebook page, you'll see that there's a link for the Stand in Your Power Facebook page, Facebook chat room. And Carlos Rebolo, my friend, who also did 24 years in prison, will be on there with the host, who's from Australia, and it should be good.
Badass.
Yeah.
Uncle Tom?
Real quick, before we go.
Go ahead, brother. Go ahead.
Thank you for having me.
Oh, thank you for stopping by.
Listen, I commend the both of you. You know, law enforcement, willing to have an ex-con come on and critique the system, that takes guts. And I appreciate it, and I commend both of you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Uncle Tom, any closers?
The only closer I have is you and I have some business to do, some more podcasts.
Yes. Yeah.
I told you I was starting when I came here. My first podcast with him. I went back to college, got my degree at 60 years old, and because I was sick of people saying I was stupid because I never finished. I got the same thing as you when I went to school. They said, "Oh, you're a Pentlow," and because my brother and sisters got in trouble, so I never wanted to finish school. I just never had that, and I did. I started. I'm still doing it. I'm taking, although I'm doing real estate to pay my bills, I'm taking classes to self-evaluate cops and corrections and military for suicide prevention. Right. So that's my goal to go forward on that. He's been supporting me. I'm going to start. I started a podcast. We started out with it was called Roadside Justice, and with what just happened in the world, I had a positive spin on it. I couldn't use it. I even tried. Old cruisers were called black and whites, and we were going to go with that. But my podcast host is Bernie Hallam's from a Manchester PD, retired. He happens to be black, so we thought right away people are going to just assume because it's a black and white guy, but that's so far from, because I've never seen him as a black guy at all. I've seen him as my friend. So we're going to come up with it. We'll be announcing probably with him, and he'll, Jimmy, the Highly Offended, will be on a couple of my podcasts, and I hopefully I get you back, and we'll be more positive with directives.
Absolutely.
So that's it, man.
Very nice. Well, people, like I said, we got to see some other sides. We got to see the other side of the fence tonight. You know, here's somebody, 25 calendars inside. He's out here now eating candy bars, fucking catching diabetes, whatever. Fuck that. You know, he's out here doing.
Gained 13 pounds.
See that shit? He living large. But yeah, no. Thank you for your time tonight, man. And like I said, you know, I'll always hear another side. I might agree with it, I might not, but I'll hear it out though. You know, I'm not one of these bitch asses that won't do it. You know what I mean? But I do want to thank you for your time. Once again, people, don't forget about the book. Can I find this on Amazon?
Yes, sir.
Amazon, yes.
There we go. It's called Down the Rabbit Hole: How the culture of corrections encourages crime. Keep your kids at home. Make them watch Netflix. Keep them off the fucking street and off my lawn. Okay. All right. Once again, people, take care of yourselves. Let's be better humans to each other. Good night, America, wherever you are.
That was good. I liked it. Spirited discussion. Nice. Getting close to my bedtime.
Oh, stop. I'll keep you up till midnight.